Steve, I'll get your thoughts first before I talk to my first guest in this hour about vaccine passports. As we are looking at, people having the vaccinations, we're looking at massive rollout. Only, half of people in the UK now have 50 or 55% have COVID antibodies. And we know that deaths are plummeting. For over 80s, they're down by 90% since the peak in January. We're now below average deaths for the time of year by a long way. Do you think that there is indeed any cause to have vaccine passports?
If it can help the economy work to get back to normal quicker, then there's a reason for it. But they'd have to have some time limitation on it. You couldn't have this as something that we need forever, because at some point it should be presumed that everyone has either had their vaccine, had a case of COVID and got naturally occurring antibodies, or can't. So it would be pointless having that. But if we could... Look, I'm biased, of course I am. If we could get pubs and therefore comedy clubs open sooner, if we open them to people who've got vaccine passports, I'll play that gig. As long as it's not something that goes on forever, where we all have to have extra documentation, I will do what I need to get this economy working.
Okay, well, yeah, I have to say I completely disagree with you on that, but I know someone else who does as well. My first guest in this hour is Alistair Carmichael. He's a Liberal Democrat Home Affairs spokesman and joins us. Good morning to you, Alistair.
Good morning to you.
Good morning to you. Lots to talk to you about, including non-COVID issues. But I just want to get, first of all, before we talk about vaccine passports, your reactions to the fact that, as I'm just going through, all these amazingly good and hopeful statistics in terms of weekly deaths going down. We've seen this huge rollout of the vaccinations. First dose, 30 million plus have had it. Second dose, 3.7 million. They'll be the oldest, most vulnerable categories. Deaths for the over 80s plummeting by 90%. We're now at weekly deaths of anything currently in England and Wales, 8% below the 5-year average. What is your reaction to all of that in terms of where we are in terms of the lockdown?
Look, these are all great figures, aren't they? And I think a lot of it comes back to the success of the vaccination programme. It's clear that things are going in the right direction. And yes, we should be able to come out of lockdown fairly soon. I suspect it will have to be a phased, easing of restrictions. Experience tells us from what happened last year that if you sort of go for the Big Bang approach, then you can soon end up with the figures going in the wrong direction again. But yeah, you're right, Julia. A lot of the indicators are going in the right direction. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and for once, it might not just be the lights of an oncoming train.
Well, you say fairly soon. What's your notion of fairly soon? Because it's the 31st of March. We're going to see some more lifting on April the 12th, some more lifting again on May the 17th, and then June the 21st, we're told again and again by the Prime Minister, is the earliest possible day for us to get back to most of our free lives. We still don't have the prospect of being able to travel abroad. We don't know when we're going to be allowed to take off these darn masks and the like. We don't know if children are going to have to wear masks in the classroom after Easter. When you say fairly soon, June doesn't feel that far away to me. Well, that's soon to me. It feels a very, very long way away indeed.
Yeah, look, and that's just human nature, isn't it? And, if you think about just one of the things that you listed there, foreign travel, well, we know that there is always a risk that once you open up foreign travel, then you are going to be open to variants of the disease, which, might even be resistant to the vaccination. You don't know. We're learning on this whole thing as we go along. So I still think it's sensible for the government to be cautious, to follow the evidence, to follow the best advice, but also to stick to some fairly important principles that if we have got restrictions, you don't keep them a second longer than is necessary, and that, the powers that we've given them, the freedoms that we gave up to tackle this time last year, are only time limited, and that they shouldn't just take it for granted. Because, I think actually Steve just made the point there. He says, well, if this gets me back into the comedy clubs and the pubs, then I'll buy it. Well, I just don't think you should.
Well, yeah, this is the key thing. Now, you and I have had a little Twitter exchange regarding vaccine passports. You said you did actually agree with me. I was delighted to find that Liberal Democrats have rediscovered the notion of being liberal once again. I'm hoping you've rediscovered democracy as well and not trying to sort of overturn democratic votes for Brexit.
I hear you. I'm not going to rise to the bait in case you're wondering.
It is an extraordinary turn of affairs where a country which has never had ID cards, where we've never has anyone anyone requiring to see our papers. Large parts of the world, including our European cousins, any officer, any official can ask to see your papers at any time. We've never gone down that route. And yet so many people are clamouring, it would seem, for vaccine passports to prove their most personal private medical records in order to go about their normal daily business. Why do you object to that?
Well, I object because I think that's the government taking advantage of people's desperation to get back out into some sort of normal life when there are other and better ways of doing it. Vaccine passports, for example, are a fundamental redefinition of the relationship between the citizen and the state. Basically, I do not give my consent for the government to insist that I prove my health status in relation to coronavirus any more than I would, for example, in relation to HIV or any other condition. Now, if you're talking about travelling abroad, well, that's a different matter because, if you've ever been to Africa, you probably have a yellow fever vaccination. You show that at customs and the rest of it. But that is very different from setting up the sort of scheme that we would have to have, that we'd have a register of who was on it, what their status was, and where they had used it, the database of the use. We're back to the arguments here that we had 15 years ago about identity cards, and it was cumbersome, and it was dangerous, and it was expensive then, and nothing has changed since.
And this is even more dangerous, I would say, and all-reaching than even the idea of ID cards, being able to prove yourself. Because people have always told in the past, well, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. But actually, you don't have to have anything to hide in your life to not want your personal medical records to be accessible to anybody. Yeah. I was speaking to, off air yesterday, someone who is involved at very high level in the NHS and IT systems and knows his stuff, and was pointing out that actually even setting up people to use this, to be able to access your medical records. So, for instance, I had mine at my GP surgery. I've got a little piece of card that, frankly, anyone could make at the local printers without even my name on it saying I've had my jab. But that only record of that is at my medical, my GP surgery. And some people have been at another centre, and those records have to get back to their GP surgery. If you had an app where someone could access, or you could access your medical records, lots of people, certainly lots of elderly people would be unable to access that and set it up themselves. They need help to do it. And you don't just get access to that piece of information, you get access to all of your medical records. And at that point, an awful lot of people's personal past, whether that's mental health problems, addiction, maybe abortions, maybe IVF treatment, maybe a lot of, family members, husbands, wives, children, parents might be finding out a lot of stuff about their family members that perhaps they didn't want to know. Quite apart from, once you've got that information, who has the right to ask for it?
Well, exactly. And you see this actually with the use of your passport. Strictly speaking, you only need a passport to travel abroad. But, try and hire a car or try and open a bank account or even, as I've done often enough, try and get on a plane from Heathrow to Aberdeen without somebody saying, I need to see your passport. That day, of course, may come. But, it's not necessary yet. I hope it never will be. And, that's just the way that the mission creep starts. There are some things in life that just don't mix. Oil and water, water and electricity, government and people's data. They just don't respect it. Eventually, it's going to be hacked, or it will be left in a memory stick in the back of a taxi somewhere. That's why I think people are right to be sceptical, and governments have to earn trust. And for that sort of intimate, personal detail, I just don't trust them, and I don't think anybody should.
Can I also just ask you about a major report that's out today regarding, this is Tony Sewell, as the chairman of this Commission on Race and Ethnic Disparities, set up by the Prime Minister after those Black Lives Matter marches last summer. And this report concludes that the UK isn't institutionally racist. On the contrary, we are a beacon and a model of how a white majority country can become multi-ethnic. He does say, we're not, this awful phrase, post-racial. Yes, there's still racism, there's still problems, but actually an awful lot of the problems faced by people who are Black, Asian or other ethnic minorities in this country aren't as a result of racism. There are other issues. Do you agree?
Well, let me tell you, my own experience is very mixed. I think there is still racism there, and as long as we try and pretend that there isn't, then, it's
But he didn't say that the Commission doesn't say there isn't racism. They're saying it's not institutionally racist.
if it's not institutionally racist, let me give you the one first important caveat. I'm just off the ferry this overnight from Orkney to Shetland. I've not read the report yet. I've only heard the news reports of it. If he has looked at the mechanisms of government and they've found that they're not found to be institutionally racist, then, that is good. I have to tell you that I have occasionally come across parts of the immigration system, especially as they operate in some overseas posts, where I have seen it, what to me as an outsider looks like evidence of racism. So you should never, ever be complacent on this. And, if the outcome of the Commission's work is that, we're in a better place than some people have suggested, then that's got to be a good. But look, whatever angle you come at this from, this is going to be a problem for us for a long time to come. And it comes down to individual responsibility again. If you see racism, call it out.